Hey neighbor, welcome back to the channel. It's time for another top 10 countdown. Actually, excuse me, it's time for another top 20 countdown because it's 2020 and I'm honestly just using that as an excuse to not force myself to cut down lists to just a top 10 at this point. The 1975 are a British alternative rock and pop outfit that have an affinity for electronics and slight wonkiness thanks to their frontman, and they made some of my favorite songs and albums of the 2010s with their signature blend of infectious hooks up against often more darker personal lyrics. They've certainly strayed from their roots in more recent years, and I'll be completely honest, I'm way more into their early material than I am the new, but don't you worry because you'll actually be seeing all of their major releases touched on in some form during my top 20 countdown. Even with this being a top 20, it was still quite difficult to whittle down, so be sure to visit the description below to see honorable mentions just outside of the list, and if you enjoy what you're seeing in this video, do me a favor and annihilate that like button, share this out with another fan of the band, and leave a comment letting me know some of your favorite songs from the group. Perhaps one of the happiest sounding songs ever written about a vicious drug addiction surfaces at number 20, pounding its clear-cut message into your brain within a few listens as you slowly start to realize how truly ravaged Matty Healy was at this moment in time. With a blast of catchy guitars and light retro synth melodies, backing vocals come in with the big assist during the hook to lift this higher than the heavens that heroin apparently gives to your body, distracting Matty Healy from the terrible everyday news that, to be fair, can be completely overwhelming.
I'll take you one day at a time. Soon you will be mine. Oh, but I want you now. I want you now.
In a complete 180 change of pace, we float back to the haunted halls of Fallingforyou from their EP 4, released in 2013 just before their debut album. Many of the songs from those early releases didn't actually make the cut for the self-titled affair, so it's always nice to stumble back across this moment of romantic bliss and fear. Paralyzed with the thought of possibly not being needed, Matty blends several unique vocal takes alongside the tempered synths and light electronic drum kicks as we descend into this vivid atmosphere, further proving that they were onto something massive very early on in their career. Loving Someone pleads for equality and rails against the status quo of socio-political issues like sexism, classism, discrimination, and issues facing the queer community. I can be quite picky when it comes to incorporating pitch-shifted vocals into a track, but the 1975 hammered out the details in a way that fit the entire song's narrative undeniably well. From its chiming keys that slowly get more of a kick to them as the music progresses, to Matty's perceptive lyrics that drop some unforgettable lines, for example, "We shouldn't have people afloat, if it was safer on the ground, we wouldn't be in a boat," the pacing is just immaculate. So again, an underrated moment from their catalog that I cannot recommend enough. Soaring singles like this sound prove why the 1975 are exceptional at effortlessly pumping out catchy, well-oiled machines, often leaving some darker, less romantic twists hiding in plain sight during the verses. The chorus should feel a serotonin boost anytime you hit play, which is probably part of the reason why this has been a mainstay in my playlist for years now. Not to be mistaken for guys, Girls lands at number 16 on my list. There's not a ton that I feel the need to add here since it is incredibly well known, but the entire band deserves credit for this clean as fuck sound that's both catchy, fun, and spry, winking to the audience left and right with clever metaphors and lyrics. My personal favorite has to be, "I know you're looking for salvation in the secular age, but girl, I'm not your savior." That line just hits differently coming from Matty. He's a clever one, so between that, relentless guitar euphoria, and those synths that babble more smoothly than the babbling creek behind my house, I ask you this: what's not to love? God, this song, man. This one hurts sometimes because you know it's about a toxic relationship, but somehow you're still rooting for them? Why the hell does this song have that kind of power over me? Oh, I know, it's because they're super convincing, and the guns and robbers and masks, they're all just metaphors for the moments in the relationship that led to this impending doom. It's brilliant, really. I always got this sense of urgency from the track, from the spiraling synths that open this song, to the delicate forlorn guitar, to that gutting vocal performance that's literally raw with its heart on the sleeve emotion. She says I gotta fix my teeth, and she's so un-American. Pulling back and forth between cultural values is Matty Healy, caught in a tug-of-war match between British and American females that clearly treat him differently, at least according to the singer's perception. She's American is ridiculously entertaining, with its quick-spirited guitars, creeping playful verses, and of course that all-out sax solo that only gets better with time. When you hit the jackpot and become famous, it without a doubt goes to your head whether you'd like it to or not. I've experienced this on a minuscule scale myself, as I'm by no means famous, so to see such an inventive deconstruction of ego going all out with 80s pizzazz is kind of like a wet dream for me. Love Me takes cues from the likes of Bowie and more as they romp around the truth, almost breaking the fourth wall as they parade around flashy synths, magnetizing guitar rhythms, and a gargantuan chorus you'd have to be a fool to resist. Releasing such a bold industrial punk-tinged song that's more abrasive than really anything you've ever released is a risk. But it's a risk I was willing to lap up like the rock music lapdog junkie I am. Was the album a massive letdown in my eyes? Of course. Yet here I sit, placing People at the number 12 spot, ahead of even some of their most well-known hits that I've already covered. Smashing someone in the face might not always be the best way to get your message across, but I'll allow it for this guttural, raw moment of protest that immediately won me over and dropped my jaw. I've been ride or die for Menswear since day one, so it shouldn't come as a surprise to see it on my countdown as one of my top favorites from the self-titled debut. We're greeted with a slow-moving but intriguing instrumental first half before diving into the lurking thoughts of a man at a wedding reception on drugs. Yes indeed, drugs, booze, and a stream of consciousness spills the beans quickly, proving that alcohol most certainly is a truth serum. I've always really enjoyed the rather unbothered feeling Matty gives off here, and George's programming along with Adam at the keys is really effective for capturing a song that really does feel quite off the cuff and spontaneous. Shockingly enough, this was historically one of my least favorites from I Like It When You Sleep for the first few months after the album released. Clearly something snapped into place in my own brain as the Ballad breaks us into the top 10. Matty lets his emotions get the best of him in a good way as anxiety spills out like an insecure volcano, with the ash and lava being the lyrical tidbits we're hand-fed as the frontman metaphorically chases down his brain through the streets of London. You could probably see brain standing for multiple things in his life or maybe even your own, but it's definitely a very important cut that deserves more attention.
I feel like I'm just treading water. Is it the same for you?
A moving song about religion from an atheist point of view that doesn't belittle anyone's perspectives? Sign me up, because Matty Healy really brought out the big guns for this one, only to peacefully lay them down as he pondered his own life and existence. I believe in God myself, as did Matty's mother apparently, and I understand his feelings of not being able to connect with something and have blind faith. It's something that really anybody who believes in something bigger than themselves has likely struggled with, but beyond the song's message, I really think that this song is beautiful musically. There's a rumbling bass groove that comes and goes, but the keys and airy drums in the intro never failed to captivate me. Well, that and Matty's deep voice. I would genuinely love to hear more of that vocal register in the music because he absolutely kills it in that range. Ready, steady, grooving bangers straight out of the 80s that feel this fresh don't walk up and smack you in the face every day. When they do, take them, hold them, cherish them, because one day you might wake up and it was all just a dream. Another dose of sad reality stuff that an infectious as fuck bottle plants itself firmly at number 7.
Yeah, way to plant, Dan.
Milk is actually not about milk. I'm sorry to burst any dairy connoisseurs' bubbles, but milk is actually a euphemism for cocaine, which, as we all know, is a hell of a drug, and unfortunately quite addictive, as they recount the story of a girl who quickly goes from 1 to 100 when using. The guitars light up the show and carry the hook on the back of Matty's energetic vocals, and I'm honestly glad that this song found a bit more exposure after being released as a standalone single in 2017.
You win, you lose, you sing the blues. There's no point in buying concrete shoes.
Rather than romanticizing death or suicide, the 1975 hand off an amazingly honest tune that feels like a modern take on 90s Britpop made to be sung in arenas worldwide. The acoustic guitar is orgasmic, and that little pause leading into the ever-climactic chorus is chilling, almost as if you're lifted from the edge of a cliff on angel's wings or some shit. In recent times, this song has grown even more important to me as lines like "there's no point in buying concrete shoes" hit a different way when you actually lose someone in your life to suicide. It just makes you want to reach out to those around you. I know that times are more than tough, they're unprecedented, and we're all dealing with way more than we ever signed up for, but it's songs like this that can feel both real and motivating at the same time as we try our best to keep pressing forward. Taunting quips between lovers guide us into the city as we escalate to the number 5 position. I have to admit, I swoon just a bit for the thick British accent that bleeds through so heavily here, and just to clarify, this is the album version I'm talking about, not the one from the EP. Pulsating synthesizers amp up the song's inertia, and those slamming drums add so much octane to the city. It's really just quite the rocket launcher when you get down to the intricate details of the mix. It's well-rounded, perfectly produced, and this is my favorite song from the self-titled album. There, I said it.
There was the serotonin man, let me ground. You call yourself a friend. I got 2 left feet and I'm starting to cheat on my girlfriend again.
Although I've never been to Paris myself, part of the intrigue of my next selection is the idea of Paris being a place that might not even exist, maybe somewhere or something you had in your life at one point that you're longing to get back to. That was always my personal interpretation of the track, and I think it's important to realize that pretty much any song can have a different meaning to an individual. The importance I affix to this one has to do with the stinging kiss of the gentle swaying instrumentation, and of course the lyrics, which are often quite sarcastic or else bleak when portraying a decaying relationship. Social injustice comes front and center on Love It If We Made It, as Matty makes a rather brilliant but simple statement: modernity has failed us. What exactly does that mean? Are we living in a simulated lie where injustices are allowed to run rampantly? No, sadly, this is our reality. It's very grim, but this politically charged song is a wonderful example of how an artist should marry these two worlds. There's anger, there's sadness, there's sarcasm, and there's hope for a light at the end of the tunnel. Sure, there's commentary on society that could perhaps feel a bit dated at some point, but I'd argue that it's a rather strong, living, breathing time capsule of modern life as tensions with police brutality, classism, racism, and horrible leadership continue to plague our world.
I don't want your body, but I hate to think about you with somebody else.
Call me a normie for having this up so high all you want. I know it's one of their most popular songs, but for good reason. It's fucking phenomenal. It's one of the best alt-pop songs of all time, and its universal message of jealousy and misconstrued feelings makes it accessible to pretty much anyone. When people say mood music, you could pretty much paint out a lyric sheet for somebody else, since this heartache is also a complete vibe washing right over the ears. Delicate reverb-soaked synths fill the atmosphere as you hang on every note, feeling all of the feels, and eventually chanting along when we get to the infamous "fuck that, get money" section of the song. EP version only, lads. Sorry, but EP. I don't entirely know how to explain it, but the album version is just different, you know? It's missing something, even though I obviously still think it's great, but Sex from the 2012 EP of the same name is flawless. Listen to them side by side and tell me you don't feel the searing swell of emotions 100 times harder from the original. Anguish seeps out of that sprinting guitar riff like nothing I've ever heard before. And Matty's borderline desperate vocal delivery of these vulnerable, open-ended lyrics deserves much more praise than my words could ever sum up properly. The guitar and bass grooves are glorious, and the song really reaches this fever pitch in its latter half where they all hit this glorious crescendo and everyone's pounding away on their instrument of choice before dropping it back down to the final vocal act. So now that you've seen my picks for the top 20 songs by the British band, I'd love to know what you thought of the countdown, in addition to letting me know some of your personal favorites from the 1975. Drop a comment and let me know, and feel free to share some suggestions for future top 10 lists that you'd like to see in the future down there too. Previous coverage of this band can be found by tapping this card here, and you can hit this one over here if you want to catch up on the last top 20 countdown. All of my social media accounts are linked in the description, go give me a follow over on those, and consider supporting my Patreon page to help out the channel financially. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon for more on ARTV.